So we have people coming in the room right now. Michael, I don't know about you, but I always feel like when I start a webinar or I start this thing, it's almost like flinging the doors open at the store.
Absolutely.
And everybody rushing in.
Everybody rushing in. No orderly single file line here.
No, so this is the virtual version of coming through the doors. So welcome everybody that's joining us on the webinar. Jojo, hello.
Hi.
It's so good having you. And Laura, can't wait to have this conversation. How are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to see you.
Good seeing you too. This is going to be so much fun. I was talking to Jojo in the green room that pre-pandemic days when tours were kind of normal, Jojo, I believe that you used to request to have your tour stop end in La Jolla so that you could spend a couple days there.
I did. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I love La Jolla.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I love your shop, as you know.
Thank
I've had
you.
very fun evenings there.
Really fun. I mean, we've known Jojo from pretty much the beginning.
2012, something like that.
I think so.
Yeah,
Was it?
a long time.
I think you were here in 2013.
I think
before you came out.
Yeah.
It was a good long time ago.
So Michael, why don't you welcome
this event? Yes, I would. My name is Michael. I own Rickstar Books in Danville, California, and I would just like to welcome everybody in the audience who's one of my customers. Thanks for being here. We're super excited for this event with Jojo and Laura. And come by the store later today. We have lots of signed copies of Jojo's new book, Someone Else's Shoes. So,
excellent. And Michael, you're going to be
here. I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who's going to run the show.
And Michael, you're going to be putting in the chat.
Yeah.
How to order your books. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, sounds great.
The book. Absolutely.
So thanks, Michael's everybody. From Rickstar. We're so excited to partner with him on this event. For Warwick's, just real quick, for those of you that may not know, as Jojo said, we're located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. We too have the books. Come by the store. I think some of you may have ordered them to be shipped to you. So those will be heading out your way soon. So I'm going to introduce these two lovely ladies, get out of here and let them have this great conversation. So Jojo Moyes is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of so many books, The Giver of Stars, Still Me, and of course, Me Before You. She's also a screenwriter. She lives in London, England. She's here today to talk about her latest book, Someone Else's Shoes, which if you follow her on Instagram, Jojo, the reel you did about your shoes, that was so fun. I loved seeing the Prada shoes. Those were my favorite.
That's great.
It was really fun. So if you're not currently following her, go out on Instagram, follow her. It's really fun. Joining here is Laura Dave. Laura herself is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Last Thing He Told Me, 800 Grapes, and other novels. Her work has been published in 32 countries, and The Last Thing He Told Me is soon to be released in a limited series on Apple Plus TV starring Jennifer Gardner. I mean, I love Jennifer, Laura, but I really want to know about Nikolai. Okay, just saying. Okay, so maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. So with that, ladies, have a great conversation. Laura, take it away.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Jojo. When your editor actually reached out about doing this, my reaction was just, if I can get an early copy, I'll do anything. So I was just so excited to read this. For those of you that haven't read yet in the audience, if you hadn't had a chance to read since Tuesday, I will avoid spoilers, but I will say that as a longtime Jojo fan, this is one of my favorites. And so I have so many questions. And so I thought we could just dig right in. So I have read the gamut of so many of your books, and this is your first contemporary novel since the Me Before You trilogy. What made you decide to return to the genre?
I don't really make the decisions. It's just what story finds me. You know, sometimes it's something historical and sometimes it's something contemporary, and I never know until something just lodges here and won't go away.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a real decision, but the decision I did make was to write something lighter than previously. I mean, The Giver of Stars, I kind of birthed that book. That was set in the 1930s in Kentucky, and it contained everything that was important to me in a kind of really passionate way, and I wrote it in a giant rush, and I became obsessive about coal mining in Kentucky. And it was quite dark in places. And, you know, it's a brutal backdrop. And what I realized this time around was, having been through the few years that we've been through with the pandemic, and my own life got pretty tricky, I just found that I was looking to watch and to read things that were a little bit lighter and a little more kind of joyous and uplifting than my usual fare. I was seeking out rom-coms and, you know, capers, things that were just going to take me out of myself for a couple of hours. And so that's what I decided I wanted to write.
And when you started writing, because one of the things I really love so much about this book is that, you know, you without giving anything away, we have two wonderful female narrators. I will let you describe them better than me. But sometimes when that happens and you sort of invest in one and you're like sort of skipping the chapters to get back to the one you like. And what I loved here so much was I loved both stories equally. I was really, really invested, and I was so invested in how those stories merged. But anyway, without giving that away, if you could tell us a little bit about who was there one character you started with first? How did you get into this? I would be really interested to know.
So the genesis of this book was actually a short story, a very short story I wrote maybe 15 years ago, which forms part of the collection Paris for One. And it was about, I think I wrote it for a women's magazine, and it was like a 2,000-word short story. And it was just about a woman who picks up the wrong gym bag and what that impact has on her for the rest of her day. And, you know, I do a lot of toing and froing to Hollywood, or I did till life changed. And it was one of those short stories that people often brought up and asked whether I could do anything with it. And I could never see it, because I just said, it's just a teeny tiny one day in a life story. And then when I was thinking about what to write, I'd come back to this story and I suddenly thought, well, what happened to the other woman? What happened to the woman whose bag got taken? And as soon as I saw it as a story of two very different women whose lives crisscrossed and collided, then I suddenly saw the book, and then it became fun to do. And I guess, you know, some of my favorite books and films have that storyline. So I love Vanity Fair by Thackeray, where you have Becky Sharp and Amelia with their fortunes crossing, or you know, one of my favorite films is Desperately Seeking Susan, where you have two very different women whose lives collide over a jacket and a pair of earrings. And so yeah, I decided I wanted to write trading places for menopausal women.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I can't believe that I didn't think about Desperately Seeking Susan when I picked this up, because it has that same wonderful that wonderful energy, you know, these two women from these very, very different coming at it from very, very different viewpoints and lifestyles. And then
and it's about uniforms. You
yes.
know, who are we when we strip away the thing that we use as armor? Who are we when we're forced to literally walk in someone else's shoes? And so in one corner you have Nisha, who is an American trophy wife in her 40s. She works hard to look the way she does, and she works hard to be the perfect trophy wife. And then suddenly, I think at the age of 46, I can't remember exactly how old she is, she discovers that her husband is about to divorce her. And on the other side, you have a British woman, Sam, who is what we call over here the squeezed middle. I don't know if you have that expression there. So she's trying to juggle a depressed husband, some kind of quite fractious elderly parents, a teenage daughter, trying to hold down a job where the boss has obviously decided that a middle-aged woman is surplus to requirements. And she's trying to hold up her entire household and has completely forgotten herself within that equation, because she doesn't have time. She doesn't have the energy to worry about whether she's had a pedicure or cut her hair properly, or so she's kind of given up. And it's what happens when those two women cross paths on a crisis day in both their lives.
Yes. And to talk about Nisha's crisis day, you know, first, it's such a wonderful setup. You know, there's no the cruelty of being literally excised from your own life in a way that she cannot get back in, even to get the most bare essentials to that. And in some ways, that journey from the penthouse wife to a hotel maid has elements almost of a screwball comedy. How did you balance the comedic tone here with the real humanity and painfulness of that situation?
Well, it's reassuring to hear that you think I got that balance, because I'm never quite sure when I'm writing it. I think probably my the thing I'm known for is moments of humor offset by moments of gravity. And if I'm writing one, I can't help but include the other. I don't know why that is. It's just how I process stuff. But yes, I mean, I think the fun part of the research for me on this book was actually going out to dinner a couple of times with a high net worth divorce lawyer who told me stories that would make even my hair curl, and my hair doesn't curl. I mean, it was extraordinary. And the thing that I came away with was how, for these very powerful men, especially because I'm afraid it is usually men, it's about control, and they do not want to be seen to lose. So sometimes you will get a judge who will rule that, the ex-wife is owed a certain amount of alimony, and they will literally go around the globe divesting themselves of assets, sometimes bankrupting themselves in the process to not let the woman win as they see it. And so, although the situation I describe in this book is extreme, Nisha is, as you say, locked out of her penthouse without anything. This is not an unusual situation for that kind of individual, because it's all about grinding someone down from the start so that by the time the settlement arrives, they're grateful for anything.
Yes. Right.
I had some, horrific stories.
Oh, that is so interesting. That is really interesting. I mean, now I'm like, I want to know all those stories. But I think that also with her too, like that was what was so fascinating to me, was you believe it. Like you believe right away that everyone would, of course, people congregate in a way toward power. So everyone that had been so lovely to her, all of a sudden, they're taking their orders from him. And it's, it's the destruction is it. That's one side of it. But then the other side of it, what's so beautiful is that this is really a story. Then what she finds on the other side, and this is not a spoiler, right away, it becomes a story about female friendship. And I was wondering why you were interested in writing about that, and if that was intentional from the start.
Well, I think, we see a lot of books about young female friendship. We see, adolescent girls and, women in their 20s, flatmates, but you don't see a lot about the solidarity of middle-aged women. And as a middle-aged woman myself, I would not have got through the last 3.5 years without my girlfriends, who have been so extraordinary and so supportive. And I found that when I was thinking about this book, I found that an interesting thing had happened, which is that when you're in your 20s, there is always a level of anxiety. I'm loath to say competitiveness, because I don't want to suggest that women are always pitted against each other, but you're always judging yourself by other people. So you're going, did I get engaged? When am I going to get engaged? When am I going to get an apartment? When am I going to get on this good career ladder? When am I going to do the things that are supposedly markers for women's lives? And what happens by the age of 40 or 50 is that everyone is the survivor of something. And all that stuff.
Oh, I love that.
And I meet a lot of women, and the thing that fascinates me is by this age, we get straight into the meat and gristle of it.
Yes.
How are you? What have you survived? How are your kids? What is going on? There's no performance. There's no trying to present a best version of yourself. All the women I meet now, and I don't know if it's as a result of what we've all been through, but we just tell each other the truth. And there's this tremendous empathy and solidarity. And I didn't expect one of the great consolations of getting to this age to be this amazing kind of sisterhood, if you like. I mean, I like men very much. I gave birth to 2 of them, but well, not actual men, that would be weird. But I I just find that I get teary thinking about how great my women friends have been to me. And so I wanted to celebrate that,
Yes.
and just kind of celebrate the capability and agency of women in their 40s and 50s, because what I really like writing about is women doing stuff, like
Yes.
women getting the thing that they need to do done. And yeah, I think if you need something done, you are someone who's 45 years old.
Yeah. And speaking of getting things done, so much has been changing in your life. You moved from the country to the city.
Yeah.
So I heart London. It's my favorite a place in the world. That and Big Sur, which couldn't be any more different than each other. But I love London very much. You moved to the city. Did that have an influence on this? And when you think about your female friendships and all of that, how has your new life there influenced the writing, influenced what you're writing next?
It was basically done by the time I moved to the city.
Okay.
So it wasn't that, but I was definitely influenced by, yeah, the kind of the sisterhood nature of it. And what I'd realized when I was writing the book, which was instrumental in my move back to London, was that what's important for me at this time of my life is connection. And I lived for 22 years in a very remote part of the country, the English countryside. You know, my nearest shop was kind of 15 minutes drive away.
Wow.
It was lovely. It was lovely while I was raising my kids. But two of my kids had left home. I got divorced. My dad, who had lived with us, decided he wanted to move back to London. And it was just me and my youngest, who was only there part-time because his school likes them to board for the last year. And there was just me rattling around in the middle of nowhere with my dogs and my horses. And while they're great company, they're really terrible conversationalists.
That's right.
So I moved. I thought, I'm going to do this. And I was very nervous, moved back to London. But I'm now 2 streets from my daughter. It would have been the same street, but she said that was too much.
Oh, I love it.
And I am 20 minutes walk from my best friend from school, who has been my best friend, since we were 16 years old. And what I am discovering is the joy of just walking my dog with her in the morning and grabbing a coffee is immense. And I guess after the few years we've all had, just having that daily walk feels like a luxury now. It feels like a huge privilege. So yeah, it's kind of exciting as well to make big changes, because at this age you think your life is sort of set in stone, and then suddenly all sorts of things just go, nope, you know, that's not how it's going to work. And you realize that, you know, the dice could fall anywhere. You could just be anyone or do anything, or try to see the opportunity in it.
It's so interesting that you say that about taking a walk with your girlfriend, because I was just actually talking about this with somebody as well. Like the same friend I bought the book for and that saved their little internet connection. We walk every morning to the beach, and I never thought that would be such a touchstone of my life. And I do think, and that's something that the book really hits on too, is what your touchstones are change. And what you think your picture of happiness is going to be changes. These characters felt to me so ripe for sort of is there going to be a TV show? Is there going to be a movie?
I hope there will be a TV show. It's been optioned by a production company, and I'm currently working on the pilot. But you know yourself that it's these things are always a lottery ticket. You never know whether it will actually happen. But B, the structure of TV compared to the book is so different. And TV structure I find far more challenging than movie structure, because for me they tend to mirror the arc of the book, whereas TV is very, very different. So I'm trying to do that at the moment, but I would love to see it make a TV series. I think there is a greater appetite, thanks to people like Reese Witherspoon, for women's stories, especially older women's stories. I mean, we have a series over here called Happy Valley about a grumpy middle-aged cop, which just broke ratings records. I mean, it was all anybody could talk about, the finale. And that's really heartening, because for decades, you know, especially for actresses, they were just kind of whisked away under the carpet once they hit 35.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love hearing that. And that's really interesting. And writing the pilot, do you prefer novel writing to screenwriting? Which is your love?
I really love doing both of them, because
Yes.
what I find is that if I'm writing a book for a long time, it can be very solitary and it's only you kind of solving your own problems, and yeah, that can be tricky. And then when I'm in, working with producers or actors or whatever, then you have other people who are helping you solve problems. And I love working communally anyway. I think I'm quite a social person. But then after a while, I just want to go back and
That's
be
your
in
whole
control of
thing.
everything and have some silence. So for me, the ideal life is to be able to kind of switch between the two.
And we've spoken a little about Nisha. Can we talk a little bit about Sam?
Yeah.
Which is to say, when you what was the expression you used to explain what's going on in her life? Middle. Yeah,
Middle. Yeah.
I've heard here that that women in their 40s and 50s, we're the sandwich generation.
Yeah, same thing.
Yes, we're taking care of all sorts of people. And did you know what her whole arc was going to be when you started writing? What is your writing process? Because I was, and again, I won't do a spoiler, I promise.
Okay.
But I was so surprised in a wonderful way with several decisions you made for her. Did you know that going in?
I may need to ask you what those are afterwards.
Yes.
I always have a rough idea where I'm going,
Okay.
partly because I like to do twists, and I feel that you have to plan a twist. You have to introduce, seed an idea, then get your reader to forget it.
Yes.
And then twist it at the end. And so I need to be a bit of a planner. I'm not one of these people who can just see where it takes you. So I kind of knew what I wanted to happen to Sam's marriage. It's really hard to say this without spoilers, but I guess I also wanted it to be about a middle-aged woman rediscovering herself. I love those stories where people rediscover bits of themselves that they had literally considered buried, that they've forgotten how to access. And the shoes in this story, they're kind of a totem. And at first they're an object of horror for Sam, because she's looking at these shoes that she has to wear to a series of vital meetings, and she's just thinking, I can't walk in those. They look like stripper shoes. I can't do it. And by the end of the day, she's kind of owning it. She's walking differently, she's holding herself differently. And I'm fascinated by the way people judge you depending on how you're judging yourself.
Yes.
Because it's that whole thing. Often I'll be walking down the street and I'll hear my grandmother's voice saying, chin up, tits out, just you got to look like you've got something going on. You can't walk around with your head dipped, even if you're feeling sad. My grandmother was a great kind of put some lipstick on and face the world kind of a person. So
yes.
Yeah.
That's actually that's sort of a great message. That's such a different, I think about that. And then I think about people like, not to generalize, but in their 20s now, it's sort of the opposite, like, messaging going on, which is like, make a reel on Instagram in which you show yourself crying, it's the opposite messaging. So I think that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, this is the real generational gap. I kind of just about got a handle on some of it, but the crying thing, I mean, I don't know, it's a different generation. It works for them to show their feelings. I'm British. I'd rather die.
Yeah, that's how I'm not British, but I understand exactly. Yes, me. I feel the same. I feel the same. That's amazing. And while you're working on the pilot, may I ask, are you working on a new book? Can we all look forward to a new book?
I have started something, but I don't know about you. I can't commit till I'm at the 30,000 word mark.
Yes.
And I'm kind of superstitious talking about that until I reach it and know that this is going to be the thing. I will say that it's contemporary. Ooh. And it has family dynamics at its heart, but who knows, the next time we speak, it may be a historical drama set in 1716. So
that's right. I think you need you need to get or I feel the same way. You need to sort of get a little bit further along sometimes, because, you know, in some ways, you know, oh, well, let me ask this way, because before I say it, who is your favorite character to write in this book? Because some of their stories, I feel like they could get another book.
Yeah, Nisha was too much fun to write. I mean, it's because she was a woman behaving badly and with no real cost to herself. And the thing about fictional narratives is women very rarely get to behave badly without being punished for it. You know, they fall under trains, or they're stoned, or they have a big scar on their forehead, and Nisha is a woman who doesn't internalize any of the bad stuff that happens to her, which is what I think most women do. We say, oh, I should have tried harder, I should have made myself look better, I should have done it. Nisha's just mad.
She is.
He dumped me after I did everything for him. You know, she's not sitting at home sobbing. She's furious because she considers herself to have kept her side of the bargain. And this is a tiny bit of a spoiler, but there is a woman in peril scene early on in the book when Nisha is followed home from a bar by a group of guys who she knows do not mean well, let's put it that way. And it was really important for me to write this scene, because what happened, and anyone who doesn't want to hear this very little spoiler, put your fingers in your ears right now. But when this guy finally lays a hand on her, and she's done this thing of coming out of the bar and she's making all the calculations that women know to make, like, this street isn't very well lit. How far do I have to run to get to a main road? Do I have keys that I can put through my hand? You know, urban women know stuff. And as soon as she feels the guy's hand on her shoulder, she swivels, squat, drops, and performs a Krav Maga move on a very delicate part of his anatomy, absolutely felling him, and his friends are in shock. And then she just gets on with her day. And the thing I really wanted to do there was, Nisha is not traumatized by this. Nisha is not kind of shaky and upset. She just, like, she's dealt with that, and now she's on to the next thing. And I wanted to show a woman who was just not swayed by everything that was going on. She's like a guided missile. And she was also appallingly rude at the beginning, which we had discussions about, me and my various editors, because, you know, you have to be careful not to make women too dislikable. But I did enjoy writing a woman who behaved badly, because I feel that as long as a character is compelling, that the reader will generally come along with you. And I think if you stay with the book, you'll start to understand why she behaves the way she does. And there are elements of her that change, but it was really good fun to write someone that badly behaved. Yes,
I can. Well, that's funny. When I was just saying, I could imagine I could spend a whole other book with her.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Because
because writing, a romance scene with someone like that is really good fun, because she meets this guy who is totally unswayed by her kind of quite dramatic behavior, and she's mad at it. She's furious because she doesn't understand why she can't play her usual games. So her main reaction for a good part of this, you know, courtship, if you want to call it that, is just being furious with him and walking away, because it's blown her brain. She can't employ all the tricks that she's learned over the years to control a man. Like, you know, he doesn't answer the questions in the right way. He makes her food when she's angry, because he argues that it's impossible to be that angry on a full stomach. He's level. He doesn't get mad about stuff. And it actually blows her brain. Rather than her softening and meeting him in the middle, I just thought it was more fun to have her infuriated by this.
I love that relationship was one of my favorites in the book. And I love that he was totally, this is not I will not, but just a little spoiler. It was like he was totally unaffected by it. And it allowed him to see the real her underneath. You know, there is a lot of armor going on in this book, and the shoes operate as armor. And it's almost like the people that really love you take away the armor, that you can move your armor.
Even when you're clinging onto it, don't take it away. And the thing is, Nisha's clothes are her armor. And, you know, she misses them as much as she misses her child. I mean, this is the thing that has made her who she is, these labels and these beautifully structured clothes, and the loss of those is actually the loss of herself. That's what she's dealing with, not that she would have the self-awareness to recognize that.
Yes, exactly.
Inside herself at all. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, that's so lovely. Oh, wait, someone just entered the chat. I just didn't know if that was Julia or Julie. Julie, yeah, she's Julie. I didn't know how many more questions I get to ask.
You want to do one or two more?
Okay, that sounds great.
Perfect.
Okay, I was having trouble opening my chat. I knew you said you were gonna you're gonna reach out to me for that. Okay, perfect. So the other thing I wanted to ask about, you have so many supporting characters here that their worlds felt so well realized to me, and characters that come from all different walks of life, and a very representative group of really wonderful characters. Do you go deep on the research for everybody? I know you said you spoke to that divorce lawyer who must have been amazing, but what is your process with sort of realizing these characters?
For me, character is everything.
Yes.
I just feel that if you can have the best plot or the best writing in the world, but if you can't get people to care about your characters, then nothing's going to stick.
Yes.
And so for me, given that the book is set in London, in central London, it was really important for me to have a diverse group of characters. I find it quite easy to write in that way because I grew up in London, in a kind of very diverse part of London, and my first job was as a cleaner. So I feel like I have lived through several social strata in my lifetime. And now I'm back in central London. I mean, the hotel research was easy because I spent the best part of 10 years living in and out of hotels, traveling. And I talk to everybody. I mean, apparently I have one of those faces where people talk to me anyway, but I do. Yeah, I want to know everybody's stories. And, if you live in central London, it's pretty hard to ignore the gig economy, the 0 hours contracts, the people who live under the radar. Basically, it's not that they're necessarily illegal, but they are paid below minimum wage. They do the jobs that nobody else wants to. And I wanted to explore what it meant for someone like Nisha to find herself thrust into that landscape, but also the solidarity and kindness of people within that landscape, who are a lot less judgmental and a lot kinder than the people in her former social circle. I mean, that's not to say, they are kind of caricatures. They get grumpy with her. They have their own problems. But I don't know if you meant Jasmine, who is the kind of chief housekeeper.
I love Jasmine.
Jasmine is like a lot of the girls I grew up with, just life forces, that kind of person who brings energy into a room.
Yes.
And it's good energy.
Yes.
And I think I'm really fascinated by goodness as well. And I don't mean niceness, because I think that's quite a different thing. And I don't think Jasmine is a nice character.
Yeah.
But what she is fundamentally good. And she spreads that goodness around.
Yes. Well, I love that. I'm going to ask one more question, and then Julie did just chat with me about giving everyone else a chance, but this is my last one, I promise. But I was going to say too that I'm just very interested. When you start writing this, then do you have a question in mind? It sounds like everything, that you map out a lot of it, but just my question is like, did you know, because when we mentioned Jasmine as an example, the movement from like almost her inauthentic relationship to this very authentic relationship, like, do you set out, how much do you know going in about what you're interested in exploring?
I always have a question that I often take to my desk wall, and it's usually, what is this really about?
Ooh.
Because all my books, you can present them one way. You can present one about Me Before You was essentially a love story between a guy and his carer, but actually that's not what it's about. What it's about is who gets to decide what the quality of life is. And what do you do if the person you love most in the world refuses to see it the same way as you do? You know, who does get to decide? And in The Girl You Left Behind, it's like, yes, it's a story about two women in different time frames trying to survive love and loss. But actually what it's about as well is art restitution. Who has the right to something that has been passed through many hands over a century? And yeah, what would you do for love anyway? So that's the question I always have in my head, which is, what is this really about? And what is this book really about? I think, yeah, I really had that question in mind. Who are we without our uniforms?
Yes.
Who are we once everything that is familiar has been stripped away? And maybe it's no coincidence that I wrote that in the time of a pandemic.
Yes.
We
often lost all our armor.
Yeah. And often I find several years on, I look back at a book I wrote and I go, oh, I was processing that, but you can't see it when it's up close. But yeah, I mean, mostly I just wanted to write fun, you know, but I seem to be incapable of writing fun without a bit of grit in the oyster.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Well, Julie, I'm let you take over for the asking, for letting everyone else have a chance.
There's lots of questions coming in, but this, honestly, you two, this is like a masterclass in female friendship. And we could have you two talking about female friendship all day. I mean, all the comments have been about like how people just feel about, and especially you all are so right on so many as we age, and wish that we could impart some of that to our 20-year-old daughters. You know, it's just so much more freeing being older.
Isn't it?
It's so wonderful. Okay, lots of questions coming in, lots of questions about the writing process, Jojo. So but the first one is actually for both of you. So Jojo, we'll start with you. How do you determine when an idea is good enough to turn into a full-fledged novel? And how do you recoup after an idea for a novel falls through and you have to start over?
That's a really good question, and actually one that I've never ever been asked before. The answer is I don't know till I've got to about 20 or 30,000 words, and then I can feel if it's working. And, you know, before I wrote this book, possibly before I wrote the one before that, I wrote 25,000 words of a book about an elderly guy in a residential home and his a kind of immigrant worker who was helping to look after him. And I really loved writing it. And then I wrote 30,000 words, and I just thought, hang on, this is too close to Me Before You. Even though I knew it was a really different story and it was going to go in a very different way, I thought, this feels like treading old ground. So I got rid of it. And I wrote, before the pandemic, I wrote a book about an age gap romance that didn't go in the direction that they normally go, set in Venice. And I had to ditch that because I couldn't get to Venice and I couldn't do the normal research because of the pandemic. And I'm quite pragmatic about those losses. I'll probably feel a bit grumpy for a couple of days, but if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. So there's no point dwelling on it. I think I'm one of these people who just generally tries to look forward with stuff like that. How about
just
you,
real
Laura?
quick, that came in the chat about it was maybe those could be a collection of short stories. Those abandoned ideas.
Those are so hard though.
They are really hard. There. Laura, how about you? How do you feel when you like have an idea that what comes to fruition and then when it has to be abandoned?
Well, I very similar to Jojo, actually. Like I often start with a question and something that I'm interested in thinking about. And it really takes sitting down with the characters and spending a bunch of time to figure out whether that is going to be the thing that comes to fruition. And, I often think that sometimes what makes you a writer is as much what you're willing to throw out as what you keep. And it brings you to what you're willing to keep. So I often have what I think of as like a palate cleanser book between books, and I write 30,000 words, 20,000 words, and then I'm like, well, this is not going to be it, and I'm like, but now I'll get to what is the thing.
Great. It's nice to know I'm not on my own.
Yes.
Okay.
Which actually brings up what you just said there is, and this is from Beth for you, Jojo. What is something you ended up having to cut from this book that you wish you could have kept, if there is anything?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I had to cut some of Nisha's really bad behavior, which I think was probably more fun to write than it was to read. She was even more rude and abrupt in the start. And I did love it, but I took my editor's points that it might be a little too alienating because she was often rude to people below her on the social spectrum, which doesn't kind of come off well. But yeah, but I did enjoy writing the scenes. She was just so appalling. It was liberating.
And we'll try to get to as many questions. There's lots of questions coming in, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So another one for you about the writing, Jojo, what was the first scene or passage you wrote, and did it make it into the final version?
Oh, that is interesting. Do you know what? Normally I write the first chapter and then delete it when I'm about 50 or 60,000 words in and replace it with something else. But in this case, because its genesis was that short story, a lot of that first chapter is lifted or, based around that short story. So it's probably the closest to the original in terms of the start of any of my books.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. From Fran. She says it's a wonderful talk. She's a writer as well. She's curious to know what your writing process is like. Do you write, and this is for you too, Laura, so we'll come to you with this one too. Do you write every day for scheduled hours, or more like bursts when inspiration strikes? And how many months does it take you to finish a book?
I'm not writing at the moment because I'm doing a lot of promotional stuff, and the timing means it's not always possible. But when I'm in the writing jag, I write in the mornings because I'm not good at writing books in the afternoon. Afternoons I leave for admin and often script work, which weirdly I can do in the afternoon, even though I can't do novels. I've got no idea why. I do write every day when I'm writing, because I feel very strongly that your writing employs a muscle that you have to keep exercised. And if you keep going, even if you're deleting 900 of your 1,000 words a day, your subconscious is fixing things for you and bringing things up and trying to make it right. So yeah, I mean, Giver of Stars I wrote in about 10 months, but I wrote through holidays, I wrote through weekends. So this one probably took about 18 months. But I think, I'd taken a year off. It was meant to be a kind of gap year originally, but then, we got a pandemic instead. So it was a really, really inadequate gap year.
Yeah.
So when I started again, I felt like I was a little out of practice. So it was probably slower than I have done previously.
The gap year was supposed to be spent out doing some fun things. And then
I was meant to be traveling and seeing friends. And instead it was like me walking around my garden with my dogs, kind of muttering to myself. It was
staring at the same four wall.
Exactly.
We all need a gap year now to recover from the gap year.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true.
I write in the morning as well. I really like to do it first thing before like the internet is on, before I feel like you can be a little bit more honest with yourself and vulnerable. And so I write every morning. I actually listen to the same song on repeat the entire time I'm writing a book. So
I think it helps maintain a tone.
Yes.
Yeah,
I really, that's sort of it every day. And I'm very much with Jojo in the afternoons. I also can write scripts in the afternoons, but not the morning. Like I think it feels more like math or something.
Yes,
writing a script.
Does. You're my writing twin. Oh my God. That's exactly it. It's problem solving, and it's that's so fascinating.
Yes.
All right, we have time for a couple more here. So Nicole is on here with her 11-year-old niece, and she wants to be a writer. So she's wondering what inspired you to start writing, Jojo, and if you have any advice for young girls who want to be authors.
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is write every day. it's a muscle. Even if you only write 50 words a day, just have an idea and keep playing with it. It's really useful keeping a diary, like a proper journal, because that teaches you how to describe things and, you know, how to frame things and think about what you want to say. And then read a lot, because you'll only work out what works and what you think works and who you want to be like. Or if you read, I mean, I've met so many young people who tell me they want to be a writer, and I say, what do you read? And they go, well, I don't really have time to read. And you're just like, no, you have to read. That's the job. That's the job. But it's really exciting that she wants to be a writer, and yeah, good luck with it. There's no reason at all why you shouldn't be. I didn't have any writers in my family. Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. All right, this one's for both of you. And so we'll start with you, Jojo, on this one too. What's the last book you read that you loved, and can you read others writing while you're writing? Can you read like your kind of stuff?
The last book that I read that I really loved, can I say two very quickly?
Yes.
Very quickly. One is a non-fiction, which is rare for me. It's called Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn, and it's her interviewing lots of experts and writers about all forms of love, from, you know, family love, love of friends, love of romantic love, what we expect, how we learn it from it. It's just fascinating. And she's spoken to some really wise people. It made me really rethink a lot of things about the relationships I have in my life, in a way that I never expected to reframe things. And fictionally, the last book I really loved was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which my daughter made me read. And I was like, it's about computer gaming. Like, that's not really my thing. And she said, Mum, you have to read this. And yeah, I can't even begin to describe this book. It's not about computer gaming. Well, it is, but it's about friendship and power dynamics and love. And it has the most devastating chapter 3/4 of the way through that is so extraordinary and imaginative and reduced me to rubble. And any book that reduces me to rubble is fine by me.
It's just that's what everyone says about that book, is that it has this. And I think what's kind of a shame about it is some people won't pick it up because they think it's about gaming. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Read this book. Laura, how about you? Do you read while you write, and do you read completely opposite?
I read constantly. I love to read. It's like my favorite. I feel like it's my reward after I'm done working. And I just wrote down Conversations on Love, because now I have to immediately go read that. I love reading nonfiction. Weirdly enough, I just finished a book about what happens at Mackenzie, which is a nonfiction book, which I'm finding very interesting. And I'm rereading a book that I just love. And I don't know if you have this, Jojo, but I have books that I come back to like perennially. And I just read them again and again. And I'm reading a short story collection by Alice Munro, which is just one of my she's one of my favorites, but she has a collection called For the Love of a Good Woman. And there's one story in there called The Children Stay. And I think I could read that story every day forever. I love it so much. So that is what I'm reading.
Okay.
And somebody popped in. They want to know, Laura, what the song was that you listened to when you wrote the last thing you told me.
I listened to a song called If I Should Fall Behind by Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, but not the song that's on the album. He sang it at Madison Square Garden on tour with his band. So you can get it on it's actually, I made a Spotify playlist that's on like the Reese Witherspoon Book Club playlists. And so you can hear that version of the song, and everyone in the band sings a verse of the song, even people that don't normally sing with him. It's like a 6.5 minute song, and that is what I listen to on repeat.
Jojo, do you have a song that was the one that you were listening to for Someone Else's Shoes?
Oh gosh,
Particular one?
I didn't think I had one particular song for this, but I listened a lot to a folk singer that we have over here called Laura Marling, because it was her attitude that I felt I wanted in the book. But normally I listen to things that have no words, no lyrics, because I find that quite distracting. So I think the book that I've written, the song that I've written most to, probably 2 or 3 books, is a soundtrack to a new version of Jane Eyre. Well, not new, it was like the most recent version of Jane Eyre, starring Mia Wasikowska and oh God, very handsome Irish actor whose name eludes me. But there's a very beautiful violin soundtrack which I can just listen to on repeat and never get bored. And it's odd how, when you're not writing, listening to the same songs again and again would seem just maddening and would ruin them for you. But somehow when you're writing, it doesn't. Yeah. I don't know how that works.
There's got to be an interesting, that has to be an interesting study of what your brain does while you're writing and listening. And it has to be.
Well, I'm not surprised at all, actually, that you listen to the same song after reading it. There's a rhythm to someone else's shoes too. That makes perfect sense to me. I think I'd like to think if you find a song that you can really connect to, it helps you create a rhythm to the writing.
Definitely. I tell first-time writers to do this, because whenever I've read first-time manuscripts, I think one of the places where they often fall down is unevenness of tone.
Yes.
And like, just do what you need to do to just keep that voice, keep that tone, keep it constant.
Ladies, I'm sorry, everybody. There were too many questions and we're running out of time. So thank you both. Laura, Jojo, you don't have any idea how much I wish you were in person with us.
Oh, I do. I wish I was there. I'd love to be in La Jolla instead of very cold gray London. Yeah.
Well, the next book or the paperback or something. And Laura, I know you're up in LA, so maybe we can recreate this in person at some point in the future, because I think it would just make my heart so happy to have both of you here in La Jolla. And I know Michael feels the same way about Rakestraw. So for all of you that are watching from Rakestraw, thank you for being here. Jojo, best of luck with the book.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for checking in. I mean, and thank you, Laura. That was such fun.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Laura, and we can't wait for the show. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right, everybody. And unfortunately, Laura and Jojo, when we close this off, we kind of all go away. So there's no post screen room. But thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.